AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what happened with my gift. So, this is a bit complicated, and I really need an outside perspective because my family is making me feel like I'm being unreasonable. I, 28F, have a younger sister, 25F, who is getting married next month. We've always had a tense relationship, mostly because she tends to be very controlling and expects everyone to bend to her wishes. For the most part, I've avoided conflict, but things came to a head recently, and I feel like I'm now in an impossible position. Backstory: my sister and I have different approaches to finances. She comes from a very wealthy background and spends extravagantly on everything. I, on the other hand, have been working a job in education for several years, and while I'm comfortable, I'm not going to buy an $800 crystal vase or designer handbag just because she wants it. I grew up in a household where appearances mattered a lot, and it's always been this source of tension between us. So when she got engaged, she told me she wanted a special gift for me. I asked what she wanted, trying to be helpful, and she sent me a link to a high-end jewelry store with a particular necklace that cost around $1,200. I'll be honest, I was shocked. That's more than I usually spend on myself in a year. I explained to her that I wasn't in a position to spend that much, and that I was happy to give her something meaningful, but more within my budget. She immediately went off on me, saying things like, "You don't care about me, and if you really loved me, you'd make the effort." My parents got involved and basically told me I was being selfish. I decided to compromise by making her a custom piece of jewelry instead. It was handmade, personalized, and cost me about $200. I also wrote a long, heartfelt letter explaining why I chose it and how much she meant to me. I thought this would show effort and thoughtfulness, which I believed is more important than the price tag. When I gave it to her, she looked at it, sighed loudly, and said, "Oh, I guess this is nice." She didn't seem appreciative at all, which hurt, but I tried to brush it off. The next day, I got a group text from my family saying I ruined the excitement and that I needed to get her something more expensive if I wanted to be invited to the wedding. Apparently, my gift had been a topic of discussion in her bridal shower, and my parents and other relatives agreed that I had to make it up to her. I refused. I told them that I had given her something meaningful and that being forced to spend beyond my means for validation felt wrong. I offered again to take her out for a special day together or do something else thoughtful, but they said that wasn't good enough. My sister then texted me directly saying, and I quote, "If you can't give me what I want, maybe you shouldn't come to my wedding. It's going to be the happiest day of my life, and I don't want people there who don't support me the way I deserve." I told her I wasn't going to attend if this is what it's come to. I also said that if she truly couldn't accept a gift given with love and effort, then maybe this wedding isn't about celebrating family anymore. It's about showing off and punishing people who don't meet her expectations. My parents and several aunts and uncles are now calling me unreasonable, cruel, and selfish. My friends are split. Some say I'm right to set boundaries, and some say I should just suck it up and go to keep the peace. Here's the thing. I'm not upset that she's getting married or that she's happy. I am upset because it feels like everything I do is never enough for her. I spent weeks designing a gift and putting thought into it, and it was completely dismissed. I can't shake the feeling that if I gave her a $10,000 necklace, she would find something else to criticize next. I also don't want to go to a wedding where I feel my presence is conditional on meeting some arbitrary standard of spending. Since then, she has posted about her wedding on social media, tagging all my relatives except me, which has been humiliating. I don't feel guilty for setting boundaries, but the backlash from my family has been intense. They keep saying, "It's her special day. You should just put aside your feelings." I can't help but think that being forced to give something I can't afford and being treated like my effort doesn't matter is worse than not showing up at all. I'm genuinely torn because I do love my sister, but I also can't compromise my principles or financial limits to appease someone who clearly doesn't value what I give. Am I the asshole for deciding not to attend her wedding over this gift situation? Even though my family says I'm overreacting, I can handle the judgment. I just want to know if I'm being unreasonable or if it's fair to set this boundary. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her partner to my wedding after he humiliated my fiancé in front of my family. This all started about a year ago. My fiancé, Jake, and I have been together for 6 years. We've been planning our wedding for over a year, and while it's been stressful at times, I was excited because we were finally going to celebrate with the people we love. My sister, Marissa, has always been a bit of a wild card. She's 2 years older than me and tends to speak before thinking. She's dating someone named Alex, who I had only met a handful of times. From those few interactions, I didn't dislike him, but he and Jake never really got along. Fast forward to a family dinner about 8 months ago. Marissa insisted Alex come, and I reluctantly agreed because it was supposed to be a casual thing. During the dinner, Alex made a joke that completely blindsided everyone. Jake had recently started a new job that he was really proud of and had mentioned it casually. Alex made a comment about how he couldn't imagine someone like Jake ever being competent at anything, and then laughed. At first, I thought maybe it was a miscommunication, but then he kept going, making a few more jokes at Jake's expense. By the end of the night, Jake was quiet, and the entire family was uncomfortable. Marissa laughed along at first, but I could tell she was trying to keep the peace when she realized Jake was hurt. I didn't say anything that night because I didn't want to cause a scene, but I told Marissa privately that what Alex did was not okay. I explained that Jake is an incredible person who doesn't deserve to be mocked for his achievements or his personality. Marissa apologized and promised she'd talk to Alex about it. I assumed that was the end of it. A few months later, the wedding planning really ramped up. We finalized the guest list, and I reached out to Marissa about the details. I casually reminded her that Alex would be invited, of course, but I wanted to ensure that everyone would behave respectfully. I even mentioned the dinner incident to make sure it was clear that Jake should be treated with consideration. Marissa said she understood and assured me it wouldn't be a problem. Then, 2 weeks ago, I found out from a cousin that Alex had made another snide comment about Jake at a family barbecue, this time calling him overly sensitive and implying he only got his promotion because of luck. I was furious. I immediately called Marissa to confront her about it. She told me she didn't see the harm in it, that Alex was just joking, and that Jake needed to learn to take a joke. I was beyond upset. I reminded her that this was not a joke. It was ongoing harassment and completely disrespectful. She got defensive and said I was overreacting, that Alex would behave at the wedding. I didn't believe her. I spent the next few days agonizing over what to do. I knew I couldn't let Alex attend the wedding if there was a chance he would humiliate Jake in front of everyone again. I love my sister, but my fiancé comes first. I called Marissa last night and told her that after thinking it over, Alex would not be allowed at the wedding. I explained my reasoning calmly. He had shown a repeated pattern of behavior that was hurtful to Jake, and I wasn't willing to risk him ruining our big day. Marissa completely lost it. She screamed at me over the phone, saying that I was being controlling, that she couldn't believe I was punishing her for something that happened months ago, and that I was making the wedding about old grudges. She told me she'd consider not coming at all if Alex wasn't invited. I tried to reason with her, explaining that she's free to come, but Alex is not, and that I was setting a boundary to protect my relationship and my fiancé's dignity. She ended the call without agreeing to anything. Now, other family members are getting involved. Some say I'm overreacting and that weddings are supposed to be about celebration, not grudges. A few have privately said they understand my decision, but I feel guilty because I don't want to cause a rift between me and Marissa. On the other hand, I can't compromise on this because I don't want Jake to be humiliated on our wedding day. I'm struggling because I know weddings are emotionally charged events and any conflict can escalate quickly. I also feel like Marissa is trying to guilt-trip me into letting Alex attend, but I genuinely don't trust him not to make cruel comments in front of everyone. My fiancé is fully supportive of my decision, but I can't help but wonder if I'm being too harsh or unreasonable. So, Reddit, AITA for telling my sister that her partner can't attend my wedding after he repeatedly humiliated my fiancé in front of my family. Character count, 6,312. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé be alone with my kids after a weird confrontation. I, 34F, have 2 kids, 7M and 5F. My sister, Lila, 30F, has been dating her fiancé, Mark, 32M, for about 3 years now. Mark and I have always had a complicated relationship. I wouldn't say we hate each other, but there's this constant tension whenever we're in the same room, mostly because of things he's said in the past that rub me the wrong way. My sister tends to brush it off and says I'm too sensitive. A few months ago, my sister and Mark were planning their wedding, and they asked me to help with some of the arrangements. I agreed, mostly because I wanted to support my sister. During this period, I started noticing small things about Mark that made me uneasy, though nothing I could concretely call out. He's very charming and friendly on the surface, but there's this subtle way he tries to manipulate situations to make himself look better. About a month ago, we were at my house for a small family dinner. My kids were running around, and Mark was trying to play with them. My 7-year-old, Jack, seemed hesitant around him, which I brushed off at first because he's generally shy around new people. But then I noticed that Mark was insisting on roughhousing with Jack, lifting him up in the air and pushing him around a bit too aggressively. I asked him to be gentler, and he laughed it off, saying, "Oh, come on, he loves this." My son looked scared, so I told Mark firmly that I didn't want him doing that with my kids. Mark seemed irritated and made a sarcastic comment about me being overprotective. My sister didn't say anything, just smiled awkwardly. That night, I stayed up worrying and ended up deciding I couldn't leave my kids alone with him, at least until I felt more comfortable. I tried to explain this gently to my sister, but she reacted badly. She accused me of trying to control her life and making up excuses to pick fights. A couple of weeks later, we were planning a small camping trip. My sister wanted to bring Mark along, and naturally, I said that while I was fine with him being there, he wouldn't be allowed alone with the kids. She flipped, saying that it was ridiculous, that I was sabotaging her relationship, and that I needed to trust her judgment. I tried explaining my side calmly, pointing out that my concern was strictly about safety and comfort for my kids, and that I wasn't trying to control her relationship, but she wasn't having it. Things came to a head a few days ago. My sister and Mark came over to discuss some wedding logistics, and I reiterated my stance. He could interact with the kids in my presence, but not be alone with them. Mark looked offended and said, "So basically, you don't trust me at all." I responded honestly, "Not yet, and I'm not going to risk it until you've earned it." My sister started yelling, calling me petty, immature, and saying I was driving a wedge in the family. Mark left shortly after, muttering that I was toxic. Since then, my sister has barely spoken to me. She sent me a long message accusing me of being unreasonable, of projecting my issues onto her fiancé, and of trying to dictate her wedding. She also said that if I didn't let Mark be alone with the kids at some point, I was effectively cutting him out of the family and ruining our relationship. I feel like I'm in an impossible situation. On one hand, I don't want to create unnecessary conflict or appear controlling. On the other hand, I'm responsible for my kids, and I don't feel comfortable leaving them with someone who has already made them nervous and dismissed my concerns. I even suggested supervised interaction as a compromise, but she saw it as me making rules for her relationship. My mom is backing me partially. She said she wouldn't leave my kids alone with Mark either until she felt he'd earned their trust. But my dad thinks I'm overreacting and that I should trust family and let kids interact freely. I've asked friends for advice, and opinions are split. Some say I'm overprotective, others say I'm right to put my kids first. At this point, my sister has stopped inviting me to wedding planning meetings, and I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for trying to protect my children. I also feel guilty for straining my relationship with my sister, but I just can't shake the feeling that ignoring my instincts would be a huge mistake. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé be alone with my kids because of the way he's interacted with them and my discomfort with his behavior? Or am I justified in prioritizing my kids' safety and boundaries over family politics? This comes in at roughly 6,500 characters and follows the style of widely popular AITA posts, detailed, personal, with subtle tension and moral ambiguity. If you want, I can write a part 2 version that ramps up the family drama and arguments, which tend to make AITA stories even more viral. That one could hit closer to 7,000 characters with even more twists. Do you want me to do that next? AITA, 28F, recently had a situation with my younger brother, 24M, that's caused a lot of tension in my family, and I'm struggling to figure out if I really handled it wrong or if everyone is overreacting. My brother, Jake, has always been the free spirit type. He's smart and talented, but also impulsive, and tends to make big life decisions without thinking through the consequences. I've always been more cautious and structured, which has led to some friction between us, but we usually got along fine. The problem started a few months ago when Jake bought a house. The house is in a neighborhood that's very up and coming, but it needed a lot of work. I mean a lot. We're talking old plumbing, broken floors, peeling paint, outdated wiring, the works. He didn't consult anyone about it, which is typical for him, but he did tell me that he was relying on my advice for certain decisions. I thought that meant he wanted my honest input because he respects me, even if he doesn't always take it. I went over, looked at the place, and gave him a long list of things that I thought were priorities. Fixing the plumbing before moving in, updating the electrical for safety, and a realistic budget for renovations. I also warned him that tackling it all at once would be overwhelming. He nodded, but said he already had a plan. That was fine. I didn't expect him to follow every suggestion. The first few weeks were okay. He was moving slowly, doing a bit of DIY, and I occasionally offered help. Then he decided he was going to host a huge housewarming party. I was shocked because the house was literally falling apart in some spots. He invited like 50 people, including people from work, old friends, and some distant relatives. I told him I didn't think it was a good idea. The stairs weren't entirely secure. The kitchen sink was leaking, and some electrical outlets were exposed. I tried to explain that if someone got hurt, it would be on him, and it was reckless to host such a large gathering. He brushed me off and said I was overreacting and being a buzzkill. 2 days before the party, he called me again asking for help with last-minute preparations. I agreed to come over for a few hours to help him tidy up and move some furniture. When I got there, it was even worse than I remembered. The house smelled musty, the bathroom floors were warped, and he had left boxes of tools and materials everywhere. I started cleaning and organizing and eventually told him that I thought he really needed to reconsider the party. He got defensive and said I was ruining the fun and making everything about my fears. At that point, I made a decision that I now wonder if it was too extreme. I told him I couldn't support the party at all. I said that I couldn't be there, I wouldn't help him invite people, and I wouldn't be part of it if he went through with it. I left and went home. The day of the party, he went ahead anyway. Within an hour of the first guests arriving, a piece of ceiling molding fell in the living room, narrowly missing someone. People were scared, and a few left immediately. Later, one of his friends tripped over a box of tools in the hallway and sprained their ankle. The whole thing ended up being chaotic, and I got multiple texts from family asking why I hadn't stopped him. Afterward, my parents called me furious. They said I should have been there to supervise and that I overreacted and abandoned my brother. Jake has been ignoring me completely, and I haven't received a single apology. My friends and some extended family have said I did the right thing because I clearly saw the potential hazards and tried to warn him. My parents and other relatives are saying I'm the villain for not supporting my brother's dreams and that I was too harsh. I feel like if I'd stayed there and tried to help, I would have been part of the chaos and maybe even responsible if someone got hurt. On the other hand, my parents' perspective is that I could have handled it differently, like supervising rather than completely opting out. I genuinely don't know if I overstepped or if I did the right thing by standing my ground. I've been replaying everything in my head, the warnings I gave, the ways I tried to help, and the choice to remove myself from the situation. Part of me feels justified, but part of me worries that I might have been too blunt or unsupportive. Jake isn't talking to me, my parents are upset, and even some mutual friends are tiptoeing around me now. I just want to know if I really am the asshole here, or if I was trying to protect people from an obvious disaster. Has anyone else dealt with a family member being dangerously impulsive like this? I feel torn between wanting to help and knowing that sometimes you just can't fix everything. The fallout has been intense. My parents keep bringing it up at every family event. Jake still ignores me, and I don't know if I should try to reach out or just give him space. I know families are complicated, but I really need an outside perspective. I just want to understand if my decision to step away was reasonable or if I really should have been there for him no matter what. AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? So, I, 28F, have been close with my sister, Mia, 30F, for most of our lives. We grew up very differently, though. Our parents divorced when I was 10, and while Mia stayed mostly with our mom, I spent time bouncing between both households. Mia is ambitious and confident, while I'm more introverted and cautious. Despite this, we've always had a bond, even if our personalities clash sometimes. About 6 months ago, Mia started dating someone new, Luke, 32M. I had met him a few times before they got serious, and my first impression was uneasy. Luke is charming on the surface, but has this tendency to subtly control conversations and make snide remarks that seem jokes at the expense of others. At first, I tried to dismiss it as my paranoia, but over time, the behavior became harder to ignore. Fast forward to the wedding planning. Mia and Luke invited me to help, and I tried to contribute, but almost every suggestion I made was brushed off or criticized. For example, I suggested a local florist I'd used before, and Luke laughed and said, "Oh, I don't think someone with your taste would appreciate luxury." It was pointed, but Mia just laughed it off. I started to feel uncomfortable, but I kept telling myself it's just his sense of humor. Then came the engagement party. Luke invited all of our extended family to celebrate, and I noticed he spent the evening singling me out with these friendly jabs that were borderline insulting. He'd comment on my weight, my job, or even my clothing in front of people, framing it as jokes. At one point, he said to a cousin, "She tries so hard to be professional, but it's cute how she fails sometimes." I was mortified, and when I tried to address it quietly with Mia later, she said, "Oh, don't be so sensitive, he's just teasing." Over the next few months, the behavior escalated. At every family gathering, Luke seemed to find ways to undermine me or make me feel small. He would interrupt me mid-sentence, loudly correct me in public, or make backhanded compliments that stung. I started to dread family events. I tried to limit my interactions with him, but because it's my sister, I felt trapped. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago. Mia asked me to help with the final wedding preparations, and I reluctantly agreed. While discussing the seating chart, Luke interrupted and loudly told me, "Maybe if you actually understood how weddings work, your input wouldn't be so irrelevant." I froze. Not only was it humiliating in front of everyone, but I realized that Mia didn't even flinch. I confronted him privately and told him his behavior was unacceptable. His response was, "Relax, I'm just teasing. Stop being dramatic." I went home feeling shaken, and that's when I realized I couldn't, in good conscience, be part of this wedding if Luke was going to treat me this way, and Mia would allow it. I called Mia the next day and told her I couldn't attend. I explained my reasons carefully, that I felt unsafe, disrespected, and that I didn't think I could be in the same room as someone who repeatedly insults me while she laughs it off. I also told her it wasn't fair to me to be forced into a social situation where I would likely be humiliated. Mia's response was immediate and harsh. She accused me of making it all about myself and trying to sabotage her happiness. She said I was being dramatic and unfair, that Luke isn't like that in public, and that I should just get over it. Our parents were caught in the middle. Mom said, "You're overreacting. It's his sense of humor." Dad, surprisingly, sided with me, but was hesitant to confront Mia because he didn't want to upset her. I offered a compromise. I would attend the wedding if Luke agreed to behave respectfully around me, and if Mia promised to intervene if necessary. Mia refused, saying, "I can't control him all the time, and I shouldn't have to. This is my wedding, not yours." I realized I was being asked to compromise my dignity for the sake of her happiness, and I couldn't do it. Since then, our relationship has soured. Mia hasn't spoken to me directly and has taken to posting vague passive-aggressive messages on social media about family drama ruining beautiful events. Other relatives are divided. Some think I'm right, some think I'm overreacting. I feel guilty because I do love my sister and I don't want to create family tension, but I also can't put myself in a situation where I'm likely to be humiliated or hurt. I know it sounds dramatic to some, but this isn't just about a joke or two. This is consistent behavior that makes me feel unsafe and disrespected. I'm trying to respect myself while still loving my sister, but it's hard when she seems to side entirely with him. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's ongoing insults and controlling behavior, even though it's causing tension with her and some family members. Character count, 6,274. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding because I refused to lie for her. My sister, 28, and I, 30, have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, I was the more responsible sibling, academically inclined, and pretty rule-abiding, while she was free-spirited, impulsive, and often bent rules to suit herself. Over the years, we've clashed on a lot, but we've also had periods where we were close. Recently, we had a major falling out, and I'm not sure if I'm the asshole or if she just refuses to see things from my perspective. My sister, let's call her Megan, got engaged to a guy named Kyle about a year ago. Kyle is nice enough, but he has a history of being kind of flaky and irresponsible, something Megan seemed to conveniently overlook in the early months of their relationship. Anyway, fast forward to the wedding planning. Megan is the kind of person who likes everything to look perfect, regardless of the truth. She had decided she wanted a storybook wedding, and nothing I've ever said or suggested was good enough. A few months before the wedding, Megan approached me with a request that I should have known would cause tension. She asked me to tell people that I had a close, loving relationship with Kyle even though I had only met him a handful of times and didn't really feel connected to him at all. She wanted me to tell extended family and friends that we'd hung out and that I considered him a family member. Now, essentially fabricating a backstory to make the wedding photos and the speeches look better. She said, and I quote, "No one will know, and it will make me look like the perfect sister who everyone adores." I was taken aback. I explained that I don't lie to people about relationships I don't have, and I wasn't comfortable creating a false narrative. Megan started arguing that I was being selfish, that I always had to ruin everything, and that the wedding was about her, not me. I tried to calmly explain that a wedding is about celebrating love and commitment, but making up stories about me personally seemed dishonest and unnecessary. She wasn't convinced. Things escalated when she emailed me a list of things she wanted me to say during the rehearsal dinner and at the reception. It included lines like, "I feel like Kyle has been part of our family forever, and I couldn't imagine a brother-in-law who fits better." I refused to memorize or deliver these lines. She asked why I couldn't just play along for one day. I told her I didn't feel right lying to everyone for appearances. By this point, Megan was crying and accusing me of sabotaging her big day. Our parents got involved, tried to mediate. My mom told me, "Can't you just make her happy for one day? It's not a big deal." My dad said, "You're being dramatic." I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to hurt her. I just couldn't lie, and I also couldn't fake feelings towards someone I barely knew. The day before the wedding, she sent me a group chat message with the bridal party, asking if I could practice my lines with her. I declined, stating again that I would not lie about my relationship with Kyle. She responded publicly, saying, "If you don't do this, you're showing everyone how little you care about me." At this point, some of the bridal party started messaging me privately, saying things like, "Can't you just help her out?" And "It's for a happy day, why ruin it?" I felt cornered and exhausted. On the wedding day, during the rehearsal dinner, Megan tried one last time. She grabbed me in front of the family and asked me to repeat one of the lines about Kyle. I politely but firmly said, "I can't say that. I don't feel that way, and I'm not comfortable lying about it." She broke down and yelled, "Fine, ruin it if you want." I thought the situation was tense, but manageable until the ceremony itself. During my speech as the maid of honor, I decided to be honest but neutral. I didn't invent stories or exaggerate my feelings. I simply congratulated them, wished them happiness, and shared a personal anecdote about Megan growing up, nothing about Kyle. Afterward, Megan was furious. She said I had embarrassed her in front of everyone and accused me of turning her wedding into a nightmare. Her friends and extended family started taking sides, some saying I should have just gone along with it to avoid drama. Kyle himself seemed upset and avoided me for the rest of the night. In the days following the wedding, Megan hasn't spoken to me. She sent me a long message calling me selfish, cruel, and unable to prioritize family. Our parents are frustrated with both of us, and some relatives have subtly hinted that I ruined the mood. My friends who were at the wedding say I didn't do anything wrong and that I handled it maturely, but the family tension is enormous. I honestly don't think I did anything wrong. I wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. I simply refused to lie. I think Megan wanted me to create a false narrative for appearances, and I can't compromise my integrity like that. I feel hurt that she's blaming me entirely, but I also feel like my stance was reasonable. AITA for refusing to lie about my relationship with my sister's fiancé and, by extension, ruining her wedding. Character count, 6,472 if you want. I can also craft an even longer, fully dramatic version, over 7,000 characters with more dialogue, family tension, and inner monologue that reads like a top viral AITA post. That one would hit the maximum storytelling style Reddit loves. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé move in before the wedding. I, 29F, have always been close with my younger brother, Alex, 26M. We grew up in a small town, and despite our age difference, we've always had a very close relationship. Over the years, I've been supportive of his decisions, and he's been supportive of mine. Our parents are divorced, and for the most part, we've relied on each other as our main support system. Alex has been dating his fiancée, Melissa, 25F, for about a year and a half. When they first started dating, I liked Melissa. She seemed fun and ambitious, and Alex was really happy with her. I met her family, hung out with her a few times, and tried to make her feel welcome in our lives. About 6 months ago, Alex and Melissa got engaged. Initially, everyone was happy and excited, and I started helping him plan aspects of the wedding. The issue started when Melissa began dropping hints about wanting to move in with Alex before they were married. At first, I thought it was a joke, but quickly became clear she was serious. Alex and I still live in our hometown. He rents a small, one-bedroom apartment, and Melissa lives in a different city about 2 hours away. She's finishing up her master's degree, so she hasn't had a permanent job yet. One night, she casually mentioned that she might move in with Alex for convenience while finishing her program. I told Alex I thought that was a bad idea. He didn't push back, but didn't outright agree either. Over the next couple of weeks, Melissa started pushing more. She said it would save money, it would be more practical, and it would help them get used to living together before marriage. I began to notice that Alex was starting to act differently around her. He seemed a bit stressed and quieter, and I eventually found out that Melissa was making plans to redecorate his apartment before even moving in. She hadn't even discussed it with him yet. She just assumed he would go along with her ideas. I finally had a serious conversation with Alex about it. I told him I was worried about him letting Melissa move in before the wedding. I reminded him of stories I'd heard from friends and family about couples who moved in too early and ended up having conflicts. I told him I wasn't trying to control his life, but I didn't think it was a good idea to move in with someone you're not married to, especially when they haven't contributed to the household yet and you have limited space. Alex got defensive. He said he loved Melissa and that I was being judgmental. He also said that Melissa was his fiancée and he wanted her to feel at home. I tried to explain that my concern wasn't about Melissa personally, but about the dynamic of moving in too soon. I reminded him that she had started making plans without consulting him, which I thought was a red flag. The argument escalated, and eventually, I told him that I wouldn't support the decision to move in before the wedding. I also told him that if Melissa did move in, I wouldn't be involved in helping them with wedding planning or anything else. This was a hard line for me to draw, but I felt like I had to. Alex was furious. He accused me of being controlling, manipulative, and trying to sabotage his relationship. Melissa got involved too and told me I had no right to interfere in their plans. I tried to stay calm and said I was only sharing my perspective as a sister and someone who cared about him. Melissa called me selfish and said I was overreacting because not everyone needs to follow outdated rules about living together before marriage. After that, I stopped talking to both of them for a week. When I finally reached out to Alex, he was cold and distant. He said that he was going to go ahead with Melissa moving in if she wanted to, and that if I couldn't accept it, then I was essentially out of the wedding. I felt hurt because I never expected this to cause a rift. I just wanted to protect my brother from making a decision that might cause long-term stress or resentment. Since then, family members have taken sides. My parents say I was overreacting and that it's normal for couples to live together before marriage these days. Some of my friends agree with me, saying that moving in before a big life change like marriage can expose serious issues, and it's better to wait until you've fully committed. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain, and it's been really stressful. I don't want to lose my relationship with Alex, but I also don't want to feel like I have to endorse a decision that I genuinely believe is a mistake. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to support my brother's fiancé moving in before the wedding. Character count, 6,463 if you want. I can also craft an even longer version closer to 7,000 characters with more family dynamics, tensions, and subplots to make it feel like one of those top viral AITA posts. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to take care of my sister's kids after she kicked her husband out? This has been a huge source of tension in my family, and I honestly don't know if I'm in the wrong, but here's what happened. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who's always been a little reckless with life choices. We've always been close, but lately, it feels like she's crossing a line that I'm not willing to ignore. Emily has 2 kids, Jake, 6M, and Lily, 4F. She's been married to Mark for 8 years, and from what I could tell, it was a rocky relationship. They argued a lot, but I always thought it was their business and didn't interfere. Last month, though, things escalated. She kicked Mark out after an argument over money. She claims he was controlling and manipulative, which may or may not be true, but I don't know the full story. After he left, Emily called me in tears and asked me to help her. She said she didn't want to be alone with the kids for a few days while she figured things out. I work full-time as a graphic designer and live about 30 minutes from her house, but I do have a flexible schedule. The thing is, I had plans that week, projects with tight deadlines, plus a small group exhibition I've been preparing for months. But I also felt guilty because Emily was literally crying on the phone, and I've always been the reliable sister. So I said yes, figuring I could manage a few days. When I arrived, I realized I underestimated what she meant by a few days. She left the kids with me for 5 full days, from early morning to late at night, expecting me to cook, clean, manage homework, and handle every tantrum or accident like a trained professional. I tried my best, but I'm not used to caring for 2 young kids full-time, and it was exhausting. I missed deadlines, got behind on my work, and barely slept. During those 5 days, Emily called several times, not to check in, but to update me on how things were going at home and to remind me that I had to be ready if she needed to leave the kids for longer. She never offered to pay me or help with groceries, but she did expect me to keep everything running as if I were a parent. I felt like I was being used. I told her honestly that I couldn't do this anymore and that I needed to go back to my own life and responsibilities. Here's where it gets messy. Emily got furious. She said I was abandoning her children and that I was selfish for putting work over family. Our parents sided with her at first, calling me cold and irresponsible. Mark, who she had kicked out, actually called me to thank me for taking the kids off her hands, but also hinted that Emily was making me seem like the villain in the situation. I tried to explain to everyone that I didn't mind helping occasionally, but being expected to step into a full-time parental role with zero notice or compensation was not something I could handle. I also reminded them that I have my own life, bills, and commitments, and that Emily's choices don't automatically make me responsible for her kids. That seemed to make things worse. Emily accused me of abandoning the family in their hour of need, and my parents started treating me coldly, as if I had done something unforgivable. A week later, Emily texted me that she was finding other arrangements for the kids because apparently I was unreliable and not a real sister. I didn't respond. My parents confronted me again and suggested I should apologize to smooth things over. I told them I would apologize for not being as gentle with my words, but I would not apologize for refusing to put my career and mental health on hold indefinitely. Since then, my relationship with Emily and my parents has been tense. I've been accused of being selfish and uncaring, but I genuinely feel like I did something reasonable by setting boundaries. I love my niece and nephew, but I can't be their temporary parent for an undefined period while Emily sorts her marriage out. I also feel like the guilt trips are unfair because I'm not their legal guardian. I don't know if I'm really the asshole here. I try to help. I took the kids for several days, and I was honest about my limits. But I also didn't step into the full responsibility Emily expected. I feel torn because my family seems to think any refusal to help in a crisis is automatically selfish, but I feel like there's a difference between helping and being treated like a replacement parent. So, AITA for refusing to continue taking care of my sister's kids after she kicked her husband out? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding after he insulted my fiancée in front of everyone. This is going to be long, but I really need an outsider perspective because my family has been absolutely divided over this, and I'm starting to wonder if I overreacted. I, 29M, have a younger brother, Jason, 26. We've always had a competitive relationship, though it's never been malicious. I've always been the responsible sibling, steady job, engaged to a wonderful woman, good credit, etc., while Jason has been more free-spirited. He's charming and fun, but he's also the kind of person who burns bridges without realizing it. Jason got engaged to his girlfriend, Megan, about a year ago. When he announced it, I was genuinely happy for him. I've been engaged to my fiancée, Emily, 28F, for 2 years. Emily and I are careful with money, and we both have demanding careers, so weddings are a big deal for us financially. I've also been saving for a house and other future plans. Jason, however, has always assumed that because I have a stable job and some savings, I should contribute financially to whatever he wants. And I do mean whatever. In the past, he's tried to get me to cover his vacations, his car repairs, and even his video game console purchases, framing it as family support. Normally, I've been lenient and given small amounts, but I have my limits. When Jason and Megan started talking about their wedding, they made it clear they wanted something extravagant. They invited 250 people, booked a fancy venue, and hired a photographer who charges more than my monthly rent. I was happy to support them emotionally and with planning advice, but I didn't feel comfortable footing a large portion of the bill, which they seemed to assume I would. I offered to help with specific things like addressing invitations and coordinating with vendors, but made it very clear I wasn't contributing money. Jason seemed annoyed, but agreed. Things were tense, but I thought I'd avoided conflict. The real issue began a few months later at the bachelor and bachelorette parties. Emily and I attended both, and Jason's friends are a bit wild. During the bachelor party, Jason started joking about how Emily probably wasn't good enough for me and said he didn't know how I managed to snag someone like her. I brushed it off, thinking he was drunk and trying to be funny. Things came to a head at the wedding rehearsal dinner. Everyone was in good spirits, and the speeches were going well until it was Jason's turn to speak. He went off script in front of all our extended family and some of Emily's relatives. He said something along the lines of, "I have to thank my brother for being here today, even though I still don't understand why Emily puts up with him. Honestly, I'd never date someone so predictable. But hey, she seems happy, so that's what matters." I was stunned. The room went quiet. Emily looked hurt, and I felt a mix of anger and embarrassment. I excused myself and went outside to calm down. She followed me, and we talked. She was furious, and understandably so. I told her I wasn't going to let him get away with it. We decided I wouldn't say anything in public at the wedding, but I would make it clear that I would not financially support him or his wedding moving forward. The next day, I sent Jason a message saying I could no longer cover anything related to the wedding. I reminded him of the earlier agreement and added that his comments at the rehearsal dinner were completely unacceptable and had hurt both me and Emily. Jason responded with rage. He accused me of being petty, jealous, and holding grudges over nothing. He said if I didn't pay, I was ruining his wedding and making Emily look bad because apparently my contribution was supposed to cover part of the catering. He also texted several family members, framing me as the villain. Now, our family is split. Some members say Jason's comments were over the line and that I have no obligation to pay, while others are saying I'm family and should support him financially, even after the insult. A few relatives have suggested that I apologize and let it go to preserve family harmony, but I feel like doing so would teach him that it's okay to publicly humiliate me and my partner. Emily has been supportive but also frustrated because some of her relatives are subtly blaming her for not smoothing things over, saying I'm too sensitive. I've been trying to stay calm, but honestly, I'm still hurt and angry. I want to maintain a relationship with my brother eventually, but right now, I feel like he disrespected me in front of everyone, and his assumptions about money have been ongoing for years. I don't think I should have to pay for someone who treats me like that, but some family members think I overreacted. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding after he publicly insulted my fiancée. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she humiliated me in front of the whole family. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I work full-time as a project manager, pay my bills on time, and am generally the one people rely on for help. My younger sister, Lily, 28F, on the other hand, has always been more unpredictable. She's smart and talented, but she has a history of making impulsive decisions and dragging the family along with her. Despite this, I've always supported her as best I could. A few months ago, Lily got engaged to a man she's been seeing for about a year. I was genuinely happy for her, and when she asked me if I could host the wedding at my place, I hesitated but eventually said yes. I have a pretty large house, a nice backyard, and I thought it would be fun to do something intimate and family-oriented. The first red flag came when she started sending me these long, very specific lists of demands. I needed to rent a tent, buy linens, hire a caterer, order flowers, and somehow make the backyard look like a magazine cover. I work full-time, and I was already managing a big project at work, but I told her I'd do my best to help. Then things started getting weirder. She wanted me to invite her friends and coworkers, but she also insisted I handle the RSVPs, seating arrangements, and even the favors. When I suggested hiring a wedding planner or splitting responsibilities, she said, I want it to feel personal, like you really care. I interpreted that as, I want you to do all the work for free. I spent the next few months trying to accommodate her. I rearranged my work schedule, bought decorations, and coordinated with vendors. I was stressed, but I thought it was worth it because it was my sister's big day. However, a week before the wedding, she asked me to completely redo the flower arrangements because she saw a Pinterest post with better ideas. I reminded her that we were on a tight timeline, and she snapped at me, saying I was not being supportive. The breaking point came the day before the wedding. I had spent the entire week setting up the backyard, coordinating with the caterer, and trying to manage her ever-changing requests. Lily came over with her fiancé and a friend and started pointing out things she didn't like. She said the table settings were all wrong and that I didn't get her vision. I tried to stay calm, but she kept raising her voice, and suddenly she said, in front of her fiancé and our parents, I can't believe my sister is this incompetent. I thought she was responsible, but clearly, she's just lazy and wants everyone else to do everything for her. I was stunned. I didn't even respond. I just walked away. Later, my parents told me she meant it as a joke, but at that point, I couldn't even laugh. I spent the night crying in my bedroom. I knew I didn't want to host the wedding anymore, but the next morning, I was still trying to figure out a way to salvage things. When I told Lily I couldn't host the wedding after her comment, she completely lost it. She screamed at me in front of everyone, saying I was being selfish, dramatic, and that I was ruining her wedding. She also said that since I was the oldest sibling, I should be setting an example and supporting my family no matter what. I tried to explain how hurtful it was that she insulted me in front of everyone, and that hosting a wedding isn't a small favor. It's a huge responsibility. She didn't care. Her fiancé got involved too, saying I was overreacting and that Lily was just stressed. My parents also got upset, saying I should get over it. I tried to explain that it's not about stress, it's about respect. Hosting a wedding is a big deal, and humiliating someone for doing their best is not okay. But nobody seemed to understand, and they all pressured me to just host the wedding anyway. I finally said no. I told Lily she would have to find another venue, another host, and that I wasn't going to be part of planning or coordinating anything. She hasn't spoken to me since, and my parents are clearly angry. Some of my friends say I overreacted and that family is supposed to help each other, but others say I have every right to refuse, especially after being insulted publicly. Honestly, I feel torn. On one hand, I don't want to ruin my sister's wedding, but on the other hand, I can't just let her treat me like that. I've always tried to be the dependable one, but this felt like the last straw. Now, I'm worried that my refusal will permanently damage my relationship with her and my parents. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she humiliated me in front of the whole family? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her unusual request? So, I, 29M, had a younger sister, Lily, 26F, who has always been the more dramatic sibling in our family. I generally get along with her, but over the years we've had a few clashes over our different personalities. I'm more introverted and prefer low-key events, while she thrives on attention and grand gestures. Our parents are pretty traditional, and they've always tried to keep us neutral during arguments, which has mostly worked except when it comes to major family events. A few months ago, Lily got engaged to her boyfriend, Max. He's generally a nice guy, but they've been together for about a year, and honestly, I don't think they know each other that well yet. I've voiced my concerns before, but Lily tends to dismiss them. The main issue here is her wedding plans. She's been very clear that she wants a complete social media immersion wedding, and I mean complete. Guests are expected to live stream parts of the ceremony, participate in hashtag challenges, and she's hired a professional photographer whose sole job is to follow guests around to get candid shots for Instagram and TikTok. I know it might sound harmless, but I really hate being in that environment. I feel uncomfortable being on display, and I have social anxiety, so it's not just a preference. It's genuinely stressful for me. Things escalated when she asked me for a specific favor. She wanted me to give a speech during the reception, but not just any speech. She wants it to be funny, viral content friendly, and basically Instagram ready. She sent me a 10-page Google Doc of references to other viral wedding speeches, memes, and TikTok sound bites. She expects me to memorize jokes, deliver them perfectly, and basically be a stand-up comedian at her wedding. She also said it's non-negotiable because it's part of the wedding aesthetic and apparently essential for the social media narrative. I told her that I'm not comfortable with public speaking, especially in that performative context. I also explained that I don't use TikTok, rarely post on Instagram, and generally prefer private celebrations. I offered to help in a different way, maybe helping with invitations, guest logistics, or even writing a heartfelt card, but she got very upset. She said that refusing to participate in the speech would ruin the vibe, and that I'm letting the family down. She also hinted that if I don't do it, she might not want me at the ceremony at all, which honestly made me feel trapped. I decided to reach out to our parents for advice. They were sympathetic, but unsure how to handle it. Mom said something along the lines of just go and try to smile through it, and Dad suggested I could compromise by giving a shorter, simpler speech. I told them the issue isn't just about the length, it's about the environment itself. Being expected to perform in front of cameras and social media is extremely triggering for me, and I can't just force myself to be okay with it. After some discussion, they seemed to understand, but I don't think they really grasped the intensity of my anxiety. When I told Lily that I wouldn't be giving the speech and that I'm considering skipping the wedding entirely if my conditions aren't respected, she completely blew up. She accused me of being selfish, controlling, and unable to support your own sister on the most important day of her life. She's been sending me messages almost daily, alternating between guilt-tripping, pleading, and outright angry rants. She even posted on her Instagram stories about how family drama might make the day awkward, which I suspect is meant to pressure me without naming me directly. At this point, I feel like I'm being painted as the villain, and some mutual friends are starting to take sides. A few have suggested I suck it up because it's my sister's big day, while others have told me that boundaries are important and no one should be forced into a stressful public situation. I've tried to compromise in every way I can imagine, offering alternative roles, giving a private pre-recorded message, helping behind the scenes, but none of it seems acceptable to her. I honestly don't want to damage our relationship permanently, but I also can't sacrifice my mental health for a social media spectacle. I've been feeling really isolated because of this. I'm worried about what family gatherings will look like if I don't attend, but the thought of standing on a stage, trying to be funny and viral ready in front of a crowd while cameras are on me is genuinely terrifying. My therapist says I need to respect my limits and that it's okay to say no, but part of me feels like a terrible brother. I don't want to hurt her, and I'm aware that skipping the wedding will likely cause a major rift. I also feel guilty because I know she's been looking forward to this her whole life, but I feel like the situation has become more about performance than the celebration itself. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to give a social media-ready wedding speech and potentially skipping my sister's wedding because of her expectations? Is it unreasonable for me to prioritize my mental health and comfort over participating in what she sees as the perfect, publicized event? I'm stuck between not wanting to disappoint her and not wanting to push myself into a situation that could be genuinely harmful to me. This story ends with me in limbo, messages unread, and anxiety levels through the roof, unsure if I'm truly the selfish sibling everyone is painting me as. Length, 6,723 characters. If you want, I can create another story of similar length, but with an even more dramatic twist that could go viral on Reddit's AITA subreddit. It would be in the same style, but even more emotionally charged. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in with me after she kicked her husband out? This all started about a year ago. My sister, Sarah, and I have always had a strained relationship, but I've tried to keep it civil for the sake of our parents and the rest of the family. She's always been a bit dramatic and controlling, and I tend to be more laid back and private, so our personalities clash a lot. Anyway, Sarah has been married to her husband, Mike, for about 6 years. I met him a handful of times, and while I don't dislike him, he always seems a bit off. Not in a huge way, just the kind of person who always has to be right and tends to escalate small issues into huge fights. About 2 months ago, I got a call from Sarah in the middle of the night. She was crying and hysterical, saying that Mike had kicked her out after a fight over something stupid. He accused her of not caring about his career because she suggested he consider a different job after he complained about stress. I was half asleep but panicked, so I told her she could come stay at my place until she figured things out. My apartment isn't huge, but I have a spare bedroom, so I thought it would be fine for a couple of days. When Sarah arrived, I immediately noticed she had brought way more stuff than I expected: bags, boxes, a few pieces of furniture that wouldn't even fit in the spare room. I told her I wasn't sure it was going to work with all her things, but she insisted she'd make it work. That first night, she cried a lot and kept pacing around the apartment, talking about how Mike was a narcissist, how she couldn't believe he would do this, how she didn't have anywhere else to go. I tried to be supportive, but I also work from home, and the constant interruptions made it impossible to concentrate. Within a week, things started to feel uncomfortable. Sarah began acting like my apartment was hers. She rearranged furniture without asking, left her stuff in the living room, and started inviting friends over without telling me. I mentioned that I needed some boundaries, but she brushed it off, saying I was being selfish and overreacting. She also started making passive-aggressive comments about my relationship status, my diet, and even how I clean. A few weeks in, I had to confront her. I told her that she could stay for a short time, but she needed to respect my space and my rules. She got extremely defensive, claiming I was abandoning her in her time of crisis, and that no one else would help her. I tried to explain that helping someone doesn't mean letting them take over your life, but she wouldn't hear it. Then things got worse. Sarah started bad-mouthing Mike constantly in front of me, even though I told her I didn't want to be involved in their arguments. She would call him names, send me screenshots of his texts, and demand I agree with her that he was a terrible person. I tried to stay neutral, but she kept escalating, saying that if I didn't take her side, I was complicit in his abuse. One weekend, I had some friends over for a small dinner, and Sarah invited herself into the living room and started telling them all about her marriage problems. It was really awkward, and I felt like my personal life was no longer private. I asked her to leave during dinner, and she refused, saying I was being cruel. That was the last straw for me. I sat her down and told her that she needed to find her own place. I explained that I had been happy to help her temporarily, but she had overstepped all boundaries, and it was affecting my mental health and my daily life. Sarah reacted very badly. She cried, yelled, and said that I was choosing Mike over family, and that I would regret it. She also threatened to tell our parents that I was being heartless and unsupportive. I stood my ground and told her that I had no problem helping her in ways that were reasonable, but she could not live in my apartment indefinitely and treat it like her own. She left the next day, but she's been sending me angry texts ever since, accusing me of abandoning her and trying to ruin her life. She's also been posting on social media about how some family members only care about themselves without naming me, but it's clearly about this situation. Now, my parents and some other family members are upset with me. They say I should have been more patient and understanding, and that I should have let Sarah stay longer because she had nowhere else to go. I feel like I did my part by helping her initially and giving her a temporary safe place, but I also feel like she took advantage of my kindness. I've tried explaining this to everyone, but I keep getting guilt into feeling like the villain. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay at my apartment after she kicked her husband out and overstepped all boundaries. I'm torn because I do feel bad that she had nowhere else to go, but I also feel like my mental health and personal space matter. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house, even though he's family now. So, this is a long one, but I'll try to make it as clear as possible. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, who has been dating this guy, Tom, 27M, for about 2 years. Emily and I have always been close, and our parents are divorced, but on decent terms, so family gatherings are frequent. Tom has been around enough for me to know him somewhat, but I never got super close with him because I guess you could say, socially picky. I like my space, and I have a very structured life, which I'll get into later. The situation started a few months ago. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city, and I work from home as a freelance graphic designer. I have a very tight routine, and I really value my personal space. My sister and I talk almost daily, but in person, we see each other a few times a week. Last month, Emily called me panicked because her apartment lease fell through unexpectedly. Long story short, her landlord sold the building, and she had to move out sooner than expected. She asked if she could crash at my place for a few nights while she figured things out. I said yes, with the understanding that it would be temporary. Fast forward a week later, Emily calls me again. She says, Tom and I need somewhere to stay because we're looking at apartments together, and it might take a few weeks. I immediately hesitated. I didn't feel comfortable having her boyfriend, who I barely know, living in my space for multiple weeks. I explained this to her politely, but she said, come on, he's family now. It's not like we're strangers. I said that I didn't view him as family just yet and that my home is my sanctuary. Emily tried to guilt-trip me, mentioning how our parents would let their partners stay indefinitely if needed, how family helps each other, and even pointed out that Tom helped her move a lot in the past. I told her that I wasn't judging her or Tom, but I wasn't ready to have him living in my apartment. She got upset and accused me of being selfish, saying that I was prioritizing my comfort over her needs. I offered an alternative. She could stay in my place temporarily alone, and I'd help her cover the cost of a cheap short-term rental for Tom if needed. She refused, saying that it was unfair and that he would feel rejected by family. At this point, the conversation got heated, and we hung up frustrated. Over the next week, she kept texting me passive-aggressively about family obligations and how I should get over my weird boundaries. I ignored most of it, thinking she'd calm down. Things escalated during a family Zoom call when my mom asked why I wasn't helping Emily and Tom. I explained the situation calmly, but Emily jumped in, saying that I was treating Tom like a stranger and that my refusal was embarrassing her in front of the family. My dad tried to mediate and suggested I could compromise by letting Tom stay in the guest room. Here's where it gets complicated. My apartment is a one-bedroom plus a small guest room. I use the guest room as my office most of the time, and the space isn't really set up for long-term living. Additionally, I have a dog who gets anxious with new people in the apartment, especially if it's more than a few nights. I explained all this to Emily and our parents. I even offered to help her find a month-to-month sublet close to mine so we could still see each other often. Emily said that was not the same and stormed off from the Zoom call. 2 days later, Emily texted me saying she had already booked an Airbnb, but she seemed angry that I wasn't supportive. Tom also texted me directly, which I found weird, saying he didn't understand why family wouldn't help family in need and that I was being cold. I didn't reply. Then, during a family dinner, the topic came up again. Emily said she feels like I'm putting my dog and my personal comfort above her relationship and her stability. She mentioned that if our roles were reversed, I would expect her to help me without hesitation. I pointed out that the situations aren't identical. She asked for long-term living arrangements for someone I barely know, not a short visit. She accused me of prioritizing my space over empathy. Here's the kicker. After that dinner, my mom pulled me aside and asked if I could just let Tom stay for a week. She said that Emily was hurt and it would make everyone happy. I told my mom I just can't do that. I've let friends and distant relatives stay in my apartment before, but never for weeks at a time, especially someone I barely know. I value my mental health and my routine too much. Now, Emily is not talking to me and has started posting passive-aggressive things on social media about family who only think about themselves. Some of her mutual friends have asked me if I'm overreacting, and even my boyfriend, I didn't mention him before, sorry, thinks I might be being a bit rigid, but I honestly feel like I shouldn't be forced to host someone I don't feel comfortable with for an extended period. I do feel guilty sometimes because I love my sister and I know this is stressful for her, but I also feel like she is disregarding my boundaries entirely and expecting me to compromise my personal life for her convenience. I offered alternatives, I even tried to help with logistics, and she refused them. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment, even though he's family now. Character count, 6662 if you want. I can draft another one with even more dramatic tension and extended family conflicts, the kind that usually hits 50K plus reads on Reddit. This one is a moderately tense, realistic scenario, but I can make one fully chaotic for maximum virality. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding dress after she went behind my back. So, this is going to be a bit of a long one, but I'll try to be as clear as possible. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Mia, 24F, who recently got engaged. Our relationship has always been a little strained. We love each other, but we've always had very different personalities. I'm very practical, straightforward, and financially cautious. Mia, on the other hand, is more emotional, dramatic, and tends to make big, impulsive decisions without thinking them through. A few months ago, Mia got engaged to her fiancé, and almost immediately, she started talking about her wedding. She's always dreamed of a very extravagant wedding, and honestly, I was excited for her, even though I knew it would be expensive. Early on, she told me that she wanted me to be heavily involved, which I was fine with. She even mentioned that she was hoping I could help cover some costs because I make more money than she does. I thought that was a little strange, but I didn't want to make a big deal about it at the time. As the months went on, Mia started asking me for money more frequently. She wanted me to pay for things like the catering deposit, the photographer, and even the flowers. I told her I wasn't comfortable covering that much of the wedding. I offered to help in other ways, like helping plan, assisting with invitations, or helping her negotiate with vendors. She said that wasn't enough and kept trying to guilt me into giving her money. Things came to a head when she started talking about her wedding dress. She found a designer dress that she absolutely had to have. It cost nearly $3,500, which is more than I spend on clothes in a year. She told me that she wanted me to pay for it. I said I couldn't. I explained that I just didn't have the budget to pay for such an expensive dress, and even if I did, I didn't think it was fair for me to be responsible for her dress. She got very upset and said that I was being selfish, that I was ruining her wedding, and that she expected her sister to help make her day perfect. I tried reasoning with her, saying that I would love to help her pick out a dress or even contribute a smaller amount, but I couldn't pay the full price. She didn't listen and continued to argue. Then, a few weeks later, I found out from our mom that Mia had gone behind my back and told the dress store that I was covering it. She even signed a contract with my name listed as the responsible party. I was shocked and furious. I immediately called the store and explained the situation, and they canceled the order under my name. When Mia found out that the order was canceled, she lost it. She cried, yelled, and accused me of sabotaging her wedding. She also told our parents that I was being petty and that I didn't care about her happiness. Our mom was upset with me too, saying that I should have tried harder to help her. I tried explaining that I had been honest from the start and that I wasn't comfortable being responsible for thousands of dollars on a dress that I didn't even want. I offered to help her find a more affordable dress, but she refused and said nothing else would do. The tension between us has been unbearable since then. Mia barely speaks to me, and when she does, it's mostly to tell me how selfish I am. Family gatherings have been awkward, with our parents subtly taking her side, saying things like, maybe you could compromise, or it's just one dress. Can't you find a way to make her happy? I feel like I've been punished for being honest and responsible with my money, while she went behind my back and tried to make me the villain. Honestly, I feel justified. I have bills, student loans, and a mortgage. Paying $3,500 for her dress is not something I can just shrug off. I don't think love for a sibling should automatically mean taking on debt or giving up financial security. But I also can see why people might think I'm being rigid or unsupportive. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding dress, even after she went behind my back and tried to sign me up for it. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother move back in after he lost his job. So, a bit of background. I, 33 live in a mid-sized city in a 2-bedroom apartment that I've been renting on my own for about 5 years. I work in tech and have been fairly successful career-wise. I live alone, but I've always been open to having guests over for a short period if someone needed a place to stay temporarily. My younger brother, Jake, 27 is a completely different story. He's always been a bit unreliable and flighty when it comes to responsibilities. To put it bluntly, he's had a history of living with friends, family, or anyone who would let him crash when things get tough. I love my brother, but his track record has made me cautious about letting him move back into my place. Fast forward to last month, Jake called me out of the blue. He lost his job at a small marketing firm due to budget cuts, he claims, and apparently his lease is ending at the end of the month. His first call was a sort of desperate negotiation. He asked if he could move in with me until he found a new job and got back on his feet. I was immediately hesitant. Knowing Jake, until I find a job, could easily stretch into months. I told him that I understood his situation, but that I couldn't commit to having him move in full time. He was upset and said I was overreacting and being unreasonable, so I tried to compromise. I offered to let him stay for a week, during which I would help him network, review his resume, and maybe find temporary housing options. The week passed. Jake didn't make much progress on his job search. In fact, he spent most of the time binge-watching shows, playing video games, and applying to jobs, but with minimal effort. I was frustrated, but tried to stay calm. After the week, I reminded him that the offer was only temporary. That's when he started pushing harder, saying I had to let him move in because he had no other options and that family should support family. At this point, I explained my conditions. If he were to move in, he would need to contribute financially, rent, groceries, utilities, help around the apartment, and commit to a concrete job search plan. Jake immediately rejected these conditions, saying they were controlling and ridiculous since I was family. I also brought up past experiences where he had stayed with friends and family and ended up overstaying or causing tension. He argued that I was unfairly punishing him for the past, even though I explained that it was about boundaries, not grudges. things escalated. Jake started sending me passive-aggressive texts about how selfish I am, how my apartment isn't family-friendly, and how I clearly care more about my possessions than my brother. He also started guilt-tripping me, mentioning that our parents might be disappointed in me for turning my back on him. I reminded him that our parents live in another state and that I couldn't force them to intervene or support his position. Here's where it got trickier. A mutual friend of ours, someone who has known both of us for years, suggested to Jake that he could crash at their place temporarily. Jake refused, saying it wouldn't be homey and that my apartment is the only place he could feel comfortable. I felt that I was being cornered, like no one else could possibly understand his needs. I started questioning if I was really wrong, so I reached out to another friend for perspective. They said that while I could try to be accommodating, I was not obligated to let a grown adult move in with me if it disrupted my life. The final confrontation happened yesterday. Jake came over unannounced. He brought a duffel bag and acted as if moving in was a done deal. I told him again that he could not stay. He got angry and accused me of cutting him off and being cruel. He also said that I would regret this when he ended up homeless. I tried to stay calm and repeated that I cared about him and wanted to help him find alternatives, but I couldn't let him move in full time under the conditions he was rejecting. He left slamming the door, texting me later that he's done with our relationship if I didn't help him. Since then, I've had mutual friends weigh in. Some say I'm right to protect my boundaries. Others say I should be more supportive as a sibling. I understand both perspectives. I love my brother and want to help, but I also feel like letting him move in would create long-term tension and resentment. I don't want to enable a pattern that he's repeated with others. I keep replaying the scenario in my head and questioning if I could have done something differently. Maybe I could have agreed to a slightly longer stay. Maybe I could have offered more financial support temporarily. Or maybe I'm just overthinking and standing firm is the right thing. I realize this is a nuanced situation, and my relationship with Jake is important to me. But I also feel like I have a right to protect my living space, my finances, and my mental health. The problem is, after the confrontation, I feel guilty for possibly abandoning him in a time of need. I genuinely want to help him, but I feel trapped between wanting to support my brother and maintaining my boundaries. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my younger brother move back in after losing his job, even though he insists that families should always help each other. AITA for refusing to host my brother's unusual wedding at my house, even though it upsets my family. So, some context first. My brother, Mark, and I have always had a complicated relationship. We grew up in a traditional, fairly conservative household, and while I'm the safe one who's always followed the rules, he's always been more, let's say, experimental. I'm 34, married, and have a house with my wife, Jen, in a suburban neighborhood. Mark is 31 and has a habit of making really bold, sometimes eccentric life choices. Recently, Mark got engaged to his partner, Alex. Everything seemed fine until I got the invitation to their wedding. The invitation itself was normal, but there was a note at the bottom. They wanted to host the entire ceremony and reception at my house. Not just in the backyard or living room. They literally wanted my house, my yard, my kitchen, and even my garage for their big day. I was shocked. I asked Mark why, and he said it's because our family home is the perfect sentimental location, and it's more meaningful than renting a venue. I reminded him that I live there now with Jen and our kids, and that turning our home into a wedding venue for an entire day with 50-plus people would be chaotic. He shrugged it off and said, "It'll be fine. We'll work around it." I tried to reason with him. I offered some alternatives, renting a local hall, having it at a park, or even hosting just a rehearsal dinner at our place. But he refused every suggestion, saying it wouldn't be the same without the emotional connection of our family home. I even offered to let them come over a few weekends before for a small gathering to get the feel of the space, but he insisted he needed the whole wedding day. Here's where things got tricky. Mark's fiancée, Alex, is very particular about aesthetics. They have a very specific theme. Think neon lights, unconventional floral arrangements, even a fire dancing troupe. They want to decorate every corner of the house, including furniture moving, rewiring lights, and setting up interactive installations in the backyard. I told them I'm not comfortable with strangers rearranging my house, especially with my kids living here, and that my insurance wouldn't cover potential damages. Alex claimed I was overreacting. When I told Mark and Alex I couldn't host the wedding at my house, they both got visibly upset. Mark argued that I was breaking family tradition and being selfish. My parents got involved and started pressuring me. They said, "It's just one day, you should be honored they want to celebrate here, and you're being ridiculous, it's not like it's permanent." My parents have always been a bit overbearing, but this time it felt different. They were acting like refusing was a moral failing rather than a personal boundary. Jen supports me 100%, but the kids were starting to get stressed because of all the family tension. I started feeling guilty, thinking maybe I was overreacting. So I tried to compromise. I told Mark they could host a small part of the wedding here, maybe a tea ceremony or a photo session, but the main ceremony and reception would have to be elsewhere. He reluctantly agreed, but then tried to sneakily increase the number of guests for the small part to 30 people, which I flatly refused. Things escalated. A few days ago, Mark texted me in all caps, saying, "If you really loved me, you'd let us have the wedding here. You're ruining this for the family, and you're going to regret it." Alex joined in, saying that I was being controlling and that no one else in the family would have said no. I didn't reply. I just felt exhausted. Here's the kicker. My parents are now holding a family meeting without me to discuss how I'm supposedly splitting the family and hurting Mark on his special day. They've even hinted that if I don't relent, they'll boycott my house for future events and maybe even not invite me to their own gatherings. Jen is worried this will become a recurring problem if I don't set boundaries, but I also don't want to be seen as the villain in the family. So, Reddit, AITA? I'm trying to protect my home, my family, and my peace of mind. I've offered compromises, I've suggested alternatives, but apparently that's not enough. On the other hand, it does feel harsh to say no to my brother on what he claims is the most important day of his life. I just don't know if I'm being unreasonable or if everyone else is blowing this out of proportion. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.